While R.O.B is a super popular character in the meta today and is a widely regarded top tier character, he still has a lot of problem matchups that are super commonplace in the meta that kind of deters him from being the super consistent top threat that he should be with all the really great tools that he has. Let us first talk about his relevant bad matchups, starting with one of the best characters in the game, Pyrometer, which we'll shorten down to Aegis. Why exactly would Aegis be such a problem matchup for R.O.B to deal with? Well, I have the answer for you. Mithra, specifically the more faster one, can foresight R.O.B's gyro. So if you put the gyro on the ground in front of you, Mithra doesn't care about that option at all because she's just able to just roll past it, activating foresight, and punish you, especially if you're close enough to it, which R.O.B will most likely be. And even if you're not close enough towards gyro to get foresighted, then you're just giving Mithra a free gyro to use. So in those cases, you want to be able to use gyro very sparingly in the matchup, where in the scenarios that she is off stage, which is where they will struggle to be. Because of that, Mithra is still really great in neutral, and makes it really hard for R.O.B to pretty much do anything because of how fast they are. And especially when Aegis opens up R.O.B, it makes it really hard for R.O.B to land, which is one of R.O.B's super most biggest problems in this meta, with characters that beat him just being able to stuff him out consistently over and over again. For example, Mithra is a lot faster than R.O.B, so she can pretty much always just catch up to R.O.B, and also alongside with the dish strength she has with her sword, she can beat out options such as Nair with her own up air and up smash. This alongside she can use with Pyra, with both of them being able to do these options, with Pyra's being a lot stronger. R.O.B is also combo food for Mithra. Mithra is one of the best characters at juggling and doing combos in the game, but apply that tenfold when the character is a really big character, that struggles to land too. With that in mind, Mithra just opens up R.O.B so much and creates such a creative combo tree for her that just annihilates what R.O.B wants to do in the long term. And the only thing that R.O.B can really do to compete in that matchup is going for edge guards versus Mithra and trying to just stuff them out when they're trying to land, because their landing options, while better than R.O.B's, still aren't the best. Now, let us talk about what I and a lot of other R.O.B players personally feel like is R.O.B's hardest matchup in the meta, and it's really polarizing for having two insanely good top reps being there today, with Meister and Mia both being top level players. Yes, we're talking about Mr. Game & Watch. So now, this is a matchup that a lot of R.O.B players personally feel like is horrible. And for that reason alone, there isn't a lot that R.O.B can deal with, but there is a lot that R.O.B has that makes it so bad. Let's talk about first what is so bad about the matchup. First off, R.O.B as a character just struggles to land. Game Watch is really good at catching landings. His up air is non-committal at all, and he's able to beat out pretty much anything that R.O.B wants to do with just either his bucket or shielding and then doing an up B. This makes it really polarizing for R.O.B to land because you don't want to give him laser, because then you're going to give him bucket that can true combo into super early kill confirms for a Game & Watch. And if you give Game & Watch gyro, bucketing it for him just reflects it back at you, which pretty much accomplishes nothing except for giving you another projectile that you need to dodge. Another thing that is really bad in the matchup is because Game Watch's juggling is so good and all of it is so damaging, R.O.B can realistically eat up 100% just off of getting put into disadvantage one time from Game & Watch. And this all also boils down to putting R.O.B in such a bad position with also being put at ledge. R.O.B, again, struggles to get off of ledge, and Game Watch is really good at keeping his opponent out ledge with his chef and just his general up air to cover any jump. On top of all of that, because of R.O.B's large hurt box, getting hit by any of this can true combo into either a down air or an F tilt depending on your DI on the chef. Game Watch is also really hard to hit because of his small hitbox, and even though he is a light character, so he may be successful to dying at more earlier percents than anything that R.O.B would do, because of how hard he is to hit and how you don't want to use projectiles against him, he is actually so much harder to hit than what he would have been without any of those tools. And because of that, it makes Game Watch R.O.B's single most hardest matchup that he has to deal with in the meta. With the matchup being super lopsided in Game Watch's favor, R.O.B still is able to do a little bit of damage towards the flat character. Versus Game Watch, you have to play super passively because a lot of your moves are super punishable to his up B out of shield, and if it hits you once, you're going to take a lot of damage. You have to play every interaction like it could just be the one that just ends the entire game for you, because if you get hit once by Game Watch, you might as well just kiss that stock goodbye. You're not going to be able to really deal with anything that he puts out off of you unless the Game Watch player himself messes up. You have to outmaneuver them the entire time when trying to land, and that can be very difficult with R.O.B's large size. Because of that, you're going to try and play in a more super defensive way, which is one of the best things you can do versus Game Watch as the robot. And we already mentioned this, but Game Watch is a very light character. You just have to take that with a grain of salt because of how hard he is to hit. Same with characters like Pikachu that are on the lighter side, but still very hard to hit because of how agile they are. But because of this, you can just keep in mind that sometimes you may be just able to kill Game Watch or to do something unsafe on you. And another small tidbit of information that can really help you out, if a Game Watch player whiffs up B on your shield, you are able to do an IDJ up air on it to true punish it, which can sometimes just net you an easy stock if they're at a lot higher percent. But not to talk about the doom and gloom of it all, let's talk about R.O.B's positive matchups that are really good for him that are also relevant in the meta today. Talking about a DLC Fighter Pass 2 powerhouse without mentioning Min Min would be blasphemy. But in this context, personally, a lot of R.O.B mains feel that R.O.B is actually very good in this matchup, beating Min Min. And here's why. Min Min is very easy to gimp because of her bad recovery. So being able to take her options away from either gimps with gyros or laser and making her waste her resources is just really good in just taking stocks very easily. Where in the matchups that R.O.B struggles in, he doesn't really have the luxury of just gimping their opponent because their recoveries are either really good or just not susceptible to getting hit by what R.O.B really has to offer. Min Min doesn't have any of that. With a really weak B recovery, you can pretty much almost always intercept it with a side B low that just covers everything. And if you hit it once, that is going to result in the stock being lost to the Min Min unless you as the R.O.B player mess up the edge guard. Min Min also struggles as a character to land in a matchup, and this is really good for R.O.B because R.O.B can just put in a gyro to just cover where Min Min wants to land, alongside with a laser with that, and she can also not deal with it very well because of her down air being caught by anything that you would want to do with those moves. And because of this advantage being very hard for her in landing in general in the matchup, this can put her in very compromising spots like putting her off stage. And if you waste her resources like that, it all increases tenfold with her getting juggled being really bad for her into getting put off stage, into resulting you in getting the win. R.O.B doesn't have to deal with Min Min off stage, which is one of the best things you'll have as a character when dealing with Min Min, because Min Min's off stage onslaught is just really good. But he can opt out of all of this by just choosing to recover high. While Min Min can try and chase R.O.B by doing their own juggle scenario by trying to go high, it is so lackluster compared to dealing with arms off stage that you'll almost always be able to make it back onto stage safely. And maybe sometimes even putting Min Min in a compromising spot from them trying to go high to catch you. This is why Min Min doesn't fare as well versus R.O.B as other top tiers do. Even with all of that though, Min Min does have counterplay options to R.O.B. For example, if you put the R.O.B in a bad position, like trying to recover low, this can give Min Min ample time to actually go for an edge guard, unlike R.O.B trying to go high. And you can pressure R.O.B even more if they're going to the sides, if you chase them towards there. With that not being in the same vein as R.O.B going high, it's more in the same sense of R.O.B going to the side, which Min Min can excel with chasing them to. Min Min's reflector up smash is also very strong, and it can break what R.O.B mainly wants to do in the matchup. R.O.B mainly just wants to put gyro and lasers out to try and make Min Min do something or just get hit by it. But if Min Min reflects either the laser or gyro, especially if it's a big laser or a supercharged gyro, it could be super devastating for R.O.B to get hit by, and put you in a super bad position that even if you hit Min Min with, you probably wouldn't have gotten as good of a position as Min Min would get with hitting you with that option. And that is how Min Min's just able to try and at least keep up with R.O.B with her added cheese factor and being able to reflect the onslaught of projectiles that R.O.B does have that Min Min can really deal with. Another matchup that I personally feel that R.O.B does very well in is Pac-Man. Now, a lot of you may be wondering about why Pac-Man may struggle versus R.O.B. But here we go. Laser being a transcendent projectile means that you can laser through Hydrant, which is really good because Pac-Man players tend to just hide behind Hydrant and try to charge bonus fruit. But because you're able to antagonize them from a distance as well with your laser because of it being transcendent, they don't really have the luxury of just being able to hide behind it, and you can pressure them while not even being anywhere close to them. And also, with the added benefit of having a large laser, can instantly knock out the Hydrant and cause Pac-Man to be put into a super vulnerable scenario with either being stuck in shield or just getting hit by either the laser or Hydrant. Also, if R.O.B takes bonus fruit, you can still use his neutral specials, and keep in mind, with the added knowledge that you're able to do Z-drop aerials, R.O.B can still do his do aerials even while having specials for Pac-Man, which takes away Pac-Man's main tool with dealing with R.O.B, because if you're not able to use his projectiles, he mostly has to focus on fighting you up close or just trying to camp you out. But if he's trying to camp you out without any projectiles, well, R.O.B has 3 projectiles that he's able to use now, even though, keep in mind, you shouldn't really try using Pac-Man's bonus fruit, because why would you try giving it back to him? R.O.B is just very good at dealing with what Pac-Man has to offer, and because of that, an unorthodox way that Pac-Man players tend to play in the matchup, R.O.B is just able to counteract what Pac-Man wants to do really well. While R.O.B still wins in a matchup, it doesn't feel as polarizing in a matchup as Min Min would be. For example, Pac-Man has a really hard recovery to Gimp, with his side B and up B, and also his Hydrant stalls being very good for him to aid with his already amazing recovery being as hard to Gimp as it is. It just, you can't really get a clear edge guard on him. For example, if you just try going for a down air, you may just be able to mistime it because of how fast Pac-Man will be on the trampoline. And also because of the added invincibility that you may have on Pac-Man's side B, and just be really hard to snipe it out. Pac-Man can also make it really tough for R.O.B to land because of how threatening he will be with Bell. Unless the Pac-Man player wastes the Bell in a very lazy manner, they almost always will have an option that can just kill you at 80 just because you got stunned for a couple seconds. Because R.O.B struggles to land as much and Pac-Man can cover the landings as much with such a good tool that he has, that would be how Pac-Man players generally tend to beat R.O.B players if the R.O.B players don't figure out how to land in a good way versus Pac-Man's onslaught of projectiles that he has alongside the Bell F Smash. Now, let us talk about some controversial matchups that aren't super big in the meta, but still impact R.O.B as a character with how likely he is to succeed in a tournament environment. Firstly, let's talk about the bad. Rosalina and Luma. Rosalina and Luma is very good but niche character. Being one of the few puppet characters in the game with having Luma, Rosalina can deal with R.O.B because of having Luma by her side. When R.O.B tries to hit Rosa, R.O.B is also going to hit Luma. And in some scenarios, even while Rosa is shielding, you're still going to be hitting Luma. And with the added shield stun that R.O.B gets from just hitting your opponent's shield and then hitting the Luma, this lets Rosalina get a super easy punish on anything R.O.B wants to do because she's just able to hit the opponent, R.O.B, just because of trying to hit their shield with also having Luma there. Now you may think, well, why wouldn't you just try hitting Luma away so then you could deal with Rosalina? That's a good question. Rosalina can actually deal with this very well. For example, you're not going to be able to use her projectiles that well because she has a move that just takes it. She can absorb the laser, and even though it doesn't heal her, it just takes it away from the field, and she could just take Gyro away from you and use it herself. And because of how fast it is and how non-committal it would be, especially with taking away Gyro from the R.O.B player, you can't really deal with Luma except with using your own basic attacks or when they're already separated. And in the case that they're already separated, then that works with every character of just hitting Luma off stage and taking a stock, which R.O.B can reasonably do with dash attacks or forwarders. However, with the biggest problem in this matchup is also with R.O.B trying to land. Because of Rosalina's up air disjoint, with Luma also, R.O.B struggles to land because you can't really nair for free, and unlike some of the other matchups that R.O.B is very good in, and because of that, with the added Luma, when you sometimes say do hit nair on the character, it could just interrupt what you're trying to do and make the matchup a lot harder than it might just seem. However, no character is without their flaws, and R.O.B can punish Rosalina for having some of these flaws. Rosalina's up B, while still being able to travel a large amount of distance, is super susceptible to getting hit by side Bs or a down air, depending on what angle there are and depending on what you're trying to go for. And it will almost always be a guaranteed death for the Rosalina player, or just put them in a really bad scenario. And with added that, Rosalina's disadvantage also isn't the best. You can sometimes bait out a Rosalina player into doing bad gravitational pulls, by say doing a gyro cancel shield. By doing this, it can make the Rosalina player feel forced to do a gravitational pull because they may feel, hey, you're just going to throw a gyro at me, why not I just take it away from you? But if you cancel with a shield, you're just able to punish it with any move, say a backer or a side B depending on the scenario you are in. But that will be how R.O.B deals with Rosalina and Luma. And lastly, let's talk about a matchup that R.O.B excels in, and that I personally feel is one of the best matchups that R.O.B has versus a super good character in the game, Ness. When Ness is hit off stage, it should almost always be a guaranteed kill for the R.O.B player because of Ness's floaty jump being so susceptible to getting hit by pretty much everything that R.O.B has to offer. And if you take away Ness's jump, he doesn't have a lot of options to make it back to stage, aside from his very long but punishable air dodge and his up B. With his air dodge being able to be punished from a down smash or a down air, and his up B being able to be blocked by a down air or any other move, but also if Ness is far away from the stage, you can just jump in front of Ness while he's up Bing and shorten the distance that Ness has. This tool is very common of gimping Ness, even if they're not at super high percents, because what does Ness do if he can't make it back to stage? They just fall and die. Since Ness's main game plan is wanting to be in the air, R.O.B's forward air and nair, which is both two super really good moves that R.O.B has, are super good in a matchup with dealing with Ness, because if Ness loses his jump even once, he should be dead, which adds on to how good R.O.B can be in forcing Ness to just waste his resources. All in all, it's one of those matchups where if you hit Ness one time in a compromising spot, Ness should be the one that loses his stocks, and R.O.B is so good at forcing Ness to use his options that you can just waste whatever he wants to do. However, Ness does have some counterplay towards R.O.B. For example, remember how I said earlier that R.O.B struggles to land? Well, in this matchup, it is no different. Ness can catch R.O.B's landings very easily with up B. If R.O.B tries going high, which is most of the time ideal because you don't want to have to deal with the down smash ledge trapping that Ness has, even though you can bait it out and punish it, you still are in a more compromising spot when you're going high and getting hit by that PK Thunder. However, the worst reward in the scenario is that if you do go past the PK Thunder and make it back to safety, then you're going to be able to punish Ness even more because they're still stuck in the PK Thunder end lag animation. Ness can also combo R.O.B very easily, and he can still bait out bad projectile options. Most importantly, the laser. Laser in itself is a really good projectile for R.O.B. However, in this matchup, you don't want to do it a lot just because Ness can absorb the laser. Big laser absorbs a lot more HP for Ness than small laser does, which makes it a lot more scarier to use it. However, you can still bait out Ness to use bad PK magnets by forcing them to do it off stage and then punishing them for doing it. However, that is more of a scenario that comes into terms of, oh, my opponent does this, well, I do that to punish it, and so on. But that is how Ness can still deal with R.O.B, even though the matchup is lopsided into R.O.B's favor. And that is just some matchups that R.O.B struggles with, does good in, and are some controversial ones that a lot of people may not know about.